All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have special guest, and we'll just call her so special that she's my wife, Lea Ivy. Lea, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
So, what we'll talk about today is a little bit about your journey, which is very intriguing to me, and I think others will really enjoy it. But you are about to run Boston for the 12th time in a row. You've run Chicago Marathon 3 times. You've run New York once, you've run Berlin once, and you're about to do London, and we'll go into all of that here in a minute. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So tell me a little bit about you, Leah, and your journey in running, how you got into it.
I think the thing that's maybe most special about my running journey is that I don't have any special running talent. I'm just willing to work harder and for longer periods of time than most people. And that paid off. I did not run in college. I didn't even run in high school more than I think I ran track a couple of years in high school, maybe freshman, sophomore year, but most of my running started in middle school. And I grew up in a very small rural East Texas town. We didn't have a cross country team. I ran, I think, the 800 and the 1200 distances that I really don't have any business running, but I surely couldn't. Maybe one of the best parts about going to a very small rural school is that they're like, we need an 800 runner, and guess what? You're it. So that kind of started my running. I think the longest that we ever ran was 2 miles, and that was considered just really long. Like, who would run 8 laps around the track? So that was nothing that I ever really conceived of. But when I went to college is probably when I started actually running as we know it today. And even then, that was back in the early 90s. I was probably wearing a pair of sneakers from Walmart, honestly, because that's just where I bought my shoes at that period of time. I didn't have any money, and I was just running for stress relief because I was in really demanding college major and I never kept track of mileage. I would just go out and run for an hour. I don't know, maybe two at the most. But I could see even then that it really paid off in terms of the way it transformed my body and just made me feel stronger and really got rid of the stress. And then when I graduated and came to work here in Dallas, I was working graveyard shifts. Really didn't
Hold on,
run.
did you ever do any races or anything like that
No,
in college?
no,
Okay.
no. I take that back. When I was in my nursing program, there were a couple of men in the program. I call them men because I was like 19, and at that time they were in their late 30s, early 40s. They were changing careers in the into nursing. And a couple of those men had run marathons before, and they were talking about how they were out running and training. And so I told them I run some, but I would never leave the campus because back then it was just not really safe and that would have been too long for me. So they invited me to come on a couple of those runs with them. I think maybe at the most we would have run 8 to 10 miles. I really honestly don't know. I never kept up with it, never thought to even ask how far we were running. But there was a half marathon that they held in Nacogdoches at the time. Again, I didn't know anything about that. And I was like, a half marathon? There's no way I can run 13 miles. Like, I just don't think that's possible. But they're like, oh, yeah, you can with what you're running. I did run that race. I can't tell you what my time was. I don't even remember the name of the race. I almost died. I remember thinking, this is so far. Oh my God. I know I didn't take anything. I don't even think there were gel products or anything back then. I certainly didn't have anything. I didn't carry any water with me. There might have been a water stop or two. Who knows? But I ran it and I finished it and I survived. And I did think at that point, maybe one day I'll run a marathon. I don't know. Maybe one day. And so when I
Idea
moved
was
to Dallas,
planted.
yeah, the idea was planted.
Yeah. College, you run the half marathon.
Yeah, and that was just a one-off thing. It certainly didn't spur me on to do it anything more at that point. I thought maybe one day I can do a marathon. So when I moved to Dallas, I was working graveyard shifts and I certainly wasn't even running as much as I did in college because I was starting my new life as an adult and, I was going to the gym and things like that, probably running just recreational, maybe 3 or 4 miles here and there, no type of structured training program. And really didn't do any major running until I guess it was May of 2006. My maternal grandfather died and he had been a miler and he went to college actually on a track scholarship. He was a big influence in my life as a young person and had always encouraged me to run and things like that. But I didn't get any of his speed. But I thought this is my year that I'm going to run the marathon. I'm going to run the White Rock Marathon. At that time, it was Dallas White Rock Marathon. And I went to what was at that time Run on Mockingbird and signed up for their training program and ran the White Rock Marathon in December 2006. That was my first marathon.
Wow.
And I've been marathoning ever since. So this is 19 years of marathoning, give or take maybe a couple of years, actually probably 1.5 years when I just took some time away because I just had not really injured myself, but it just took the wind out of my sails. And I just wasn't really, my head wasn't right to be where I needed to be to train properly.
That first marathon, though, did you feel like that first, I mean, you were going to run on, did you feel like you were properly trained? Did you do well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
No, they had a great program back then. And I'm assuming they still, I know that Run On doesn't exist in the same way now, but they did. They had a really good program. Even at that time, I didn't own a Garmin, or the very basic Garmins were there at that point. Like our pace leaders, I remember they had these mysterious watches called Garmins. And I was like, I don't know why I would ever need something like that. There's no reason why I would need that. I just showed up and whatever they said to run, that's what I ran with. I didn't even have a watch. Like maybe I had a Timex or something like that. It's like a stopwatch type thing, but it never occurred to me I never tracked my miles. I didn't track my pace or whatever. When we did our speed work, I would just try to stay up with the pace leader. So at that point, I was in like the 4-hour marathon group, and it worked because I ran 4:05, and yeah, I didn't make it under 4 hours, but I was just happy to just complete it. I couldn't believe that I ran 26.2 miles. But, and yeah, at the end, I thought I was going to die, but I didn't. And then so the seed was really planted then that, yeah, I can probably do this faster if I just keep training. And in 2007, I ended up moving to Houston, and I did go sub 3 like the next year in Houston. I got in with the training group down
Do you
there.
mean sub 4?
I'm sorry, sub 4. Yes, definitely not sub 3. But I went sub 4, and yeah, I thought, okay, I'm on the trajectory. I'm doing well now. And at that point, I had learned about Boston, but I still was like, I'll never be fast enough to do Boston. That's just, I couldn't conceive of that. It's like, that just seems like it's way out of my wheelhouse. So I didn't even have that as my sights. I was just trying to chip away at, okay, every marathon, maybe I can get faster, but it didn't work that way. In fact, it went the other way. I started getting slower and just not having very good races. And looking back on it, it was just a matter of I was not training properly. I was not doing all the structured speed work that I should be doing. I was not fueling myself properly. And that meant like during the runs, but then also just my nutrition on a day-to-day basis. Not that my diet was terrible, but I just wasn't doing the work that I needed to be doing. And I think that was the time that I developed like some aches and pains in my right hip and lower back. And I ended up going to PT, and I didn't have to stop running for 3 weeks, only about 3 or 4 weeks. And then I realized, okay, now I have the tools that I need to do this properly. So a lot of it was just some strengthening. And I had been in the gym. I've always been somebody who's enjoyed the gym and who likes to lift weights, which is not common among runners. Most runners just like to go to the gym because they have to. But I really like being in the gym. And so I was very compliant with my exercise program, and I got right back to running pretty quickly. And then it was, I think, probably January of 12. I got in with a small group of people down there that were training. I want to compare them to like what the co-op is here, the White Rock Running Co-op, although this was only about 30 or 40 people at the time. It's not near as big as what it is here, but they were just a small group of individuals who would meet 2 or 3 times a week at different locations in Houston where I was living. And then we would roughly follow a training schedule. People were training for all different things, be running with somebody, but maybe not. It just depended on whoever showed up. But we would put fluids out for each other and things like that. But the thing about this group that was really special was that everybody was really focused on performance. And there were people there who were really fast, who were sub 3 marathoners. There were people who were trying to go sub 4:30. So it was a broad range of people. There were people who were even training for ultramarathons, which at the time I was like, nuts. I don't know why anybody would do that. But
When you've done a 100-miler, we won't necessarily talk about that, but you've dipped your
yeah,
toes into
yeah, I
ultra
did.
running several times.
Yeah. But they were all really focused on performance, whatever performance meant to them. And it was a form of positive peer pressure. And there was a woman in the group who said, hey, I'm going to run Chicago this year. Do you want to go run Chicago with me? Let's enter the lottery. And I was just like, why would anybody go out of state to run a marathon? We got one right here. Why? I was like,
Illogical.
no, at that time, I still was just not really processing a lot of what happened outside of my small little world. But I said, sure, okay, I'll enter the lottery with you. And
Take a chance.
and we both got in. So I was like, okay, all right, I have all year to train for this marathon that's going to be in October. And we know what the summers are like here in Dallas, summers in Houston. That's where the magic happens, is that if you can survive those summer months and doing all your long runs, and then you're going to set yourself up if you end up with a nice fall weather day, which is what we had in October of 2012. I didn't go up there with any kind of goal other than to try to beat my fastest time, which I think at that time was like 350, 351 or something like that. And I ended up running 340 and change, I think, which was like a huge breakthrough for me because at that time I was 38 in the fall of 2012. And
Oh, wow, I was thinking you're 38 now. Wow.
yeah. But I didn't even realize it at the time. Of course, I knew by then what it took to get into Boston, but I was like, yeah, I didn't qualify for Boston. I don't even remember because I think it was right at 340, but I was over 340. But then I had a friend mention to me, oh, no, you did qualify for Boston. You qualified for Boston 2014 because you're going to be 40 on race day in 2014. Their qualifying time was 345 and I had a 340 and change. So that wouldn't necessarily get me in today. Now that the buffer times are so much more strict.
It actually might, because it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, we've had a couple of times where it was like 5 minutes, 6, 7, something like that. It wasn't even then, although it was competitive, it wasn't near as competitive as it is now. The buffer.
Yeah, it's changed a lot.
But so that just really lit my fire. Then I came back to Houston and then I ran Houston in 2013 and I shaved another 5 minutes off. So then I was like, all right, now it became a quest to get as fast as I could. And then when I moved back to Dallas in 2013, I joined the Dallas Running Club, which is where we met.
We did. Tell that story real quick from your point of view, how we met.
We met when I came back to check on you when you were lagging on a long run. And I thought, that guy doesn't look too good back there. Maybe we should go check on him.
So the way I saw it was I was running my first time to ever run 9 miles at Dallas Running Club at the start of the season during marathon training. I don't know why I was thinking I was going to run a marathon. I did, but anyways, so probably the last mile, 2 miles, I was really just struggling big time. And I was like, let's just figure out how to get home later or back to the thing. And then you turned around and you met me there. It's history from there. No, yeah,
Well,
it's not really history from
it
there.
was about a year later before we started dating. But yeah. But I trained with DRC for a couple seasons and brought my time down about another 5 minutes. I broke the 330 barrier. And then it was in 2016. So my first Boston was in 2014, had a disastrous race. It was really tough for me. I was in the mid tent, but I was like, I'm going to finish this no matter what, because I want that medal. I was like, if you quit, you're not going to get that medal and you may never come back here again. And so I finished it. And then at that point, I was like, okay, I've got to change some things. One of them being my fueling situation, because again, I was still hardly fueling during races. I was taking as little as I possibly could in terms of fluids.
That's the right thing for a marathon, is it?
And if you want to get faster and you want to race, you can run a marathon on fumes if you want. It's not very pleasant, but you can't race one well without fuel on board. So I went to see a sports dietitian, Eve with NutriWorks, which I know a lot of people have worked with. And she really helped me learn about proper fueling and my nutrition in general. I wanted to change my body composition. And that was another.
I remember that, by the way.
Yeah. It was really eye-opening because you think you're doing things correctly or you think you're not eating as much as you are and you need to learn to put the proper foods together. And I guess but nutrition is very individual. And that's why I recommend to everybody that they see a licensed registered sports dietitian for assistance if they have any problems with their weight management or racing, fueling. It's just been invaluable. And I've gone back to see her and I've seen Maria there over the years. And I would recommend any of their practitioners because they're just excellent and they're experts.
By the way, they're not sponsoring this.
No, but I know that's one piece that a lot of people struggle with or that they don't. Yeah, it's not that. They know it's important, but they'll go and spend a lot of money on shoes or things like that. But then you're not spending money on solid nutrition advice or coming up with a solid plan for how to get through a race. And what to do. And it's been a big factor for me. I still struggle with fueling during races, and that's on me. I'm someone who does not like to eat or drink when I run, period. I just don't like it. I've always struggled with it. Yeah. So
But you do it.
I shouldn't be running long distances if I don't want to, if I don't want to eat or drink during runs, but it's critical. You have to do it. So yeah, so here we are now, 2016. So I guess it was 2016. And so that happened. And I said, I'm getting a little burnout. I'm tired of I'm watching the clock all the time. At this point, of course, I had the Garmin and I was hyper focused on pace. And I was like, I'm really tired of this. I ran a 50 mile. I think I ran my 50 miler. I ran a 50 miler in 2016, I think it was, or maybe it was 2017. I don't know. It was 2016. And I trained myself.
Let's back up because I want people to know this, is that before we started truly dating, we went on a trip and I got you into trail running.
That is
over
true.
at- we did
Yes,
it.
true. You
We
did
signed
it.
up for, I guess, an 18 miler or
It was
30K
like
or
a
something.
30K. Yeah.
Some bullshit. And you finished it and I did not. So anyways, that's where you got into trail running. And then it eventually ended up that, hey, you wanted to kind of think about ultra running. And then so you
Yeah.
did that 50
Yeah, that's
mile.
true. And so I trained and ran the Rocky 50 miler. And I think that was in 2016. So February 2016. And it was at that point that I thought, okay, now I've done a 50 miler. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to do this 100 miler, because at that point we had been introduced to the trail running community and all these people in there were doing 100 milers. It's like the gateway drug. You run a 5K, you run a 10K, you run a half, you run a marathon, or you go from couch to marathon, whatever. It's
By
just,
the way, I never got on that drug.
yeah, but I thought I'm going to need a coach for this because
Yeah.
I know how to train for a marathon. I know the mileage that it takes for that. I know I shouldn't be doing 4 times that to run a 100 miler. There's no way I won't survive that. But I'm too type A. I knew I was at risk of overtraining. So I hired a coach and I went with Liza Howard with Charmin Ultra. I wanted somebody who was familiar with both running road racing and trail racing, because I obviously do both. I do a lot more road running now, and I've always done a lot more road running than trail. Yeah, so I chose her for that reason, and also just because I looked at her resume and it was very impressive, and we hit it off when we had our coaching call, and she understood my goals. She was a woman close to my age. She had done a lot of impressive things, and I will credit her. I was coached by her until recently for 8 years, and I will credit her with helping me to stay healthy and for reaching my PRs. And because she individualized my program and she really revolutionized the way that I approached my training. At that point, I started training on my own, which is what I've primarily done for the last 8 years. And there's been a lot of sacrifice in that. And there's some things in that I didn't like, the fact that I was training a lot on my own. But when you're following an individualized plan, it's really hard to run with other people if there's not somebody that's running like your exact and really close to
Your
what you're.
training program,
Yeah,
basically.
like I have an individualized plan. That's the whole point of having a coach. But the thing I think that one of the things she taught me that was just most important and that I encourage everybody to do now is I don't train by pace anymore. I train by effort. And when she first introduced me to that, I was not resistant. I was willing to try it, but I was just like, I don't know what you mean. You want me to run for 20 minutes at marathon pace effort. What pace do you want me to run? I don't know what pace to run. And she was like, I don't want you to run a certain pace. I want you to run what you feel. You should be able to, you should feel in your body what a 5K effort is, what a 10K effort is, what a half marathon effort is. You should be able to change those gears. And even now, after running as long as I have, that's difficult for me to manage, but it's a constant challenge. But it also helped me get my eyes off the watch, stop watching the watch. Everybody wants to watch the watch. You pace a lot of races or you pace people in groups and everybody's concerned about, we're going 10 minutes and 10 seconds too fast. We're going 10 seconds too slow. Oh, the only person that needs to worry about that is the person pacing, and everybody else.
I was worrying about it today at a DRC run. We're doing 12 miles and the guy was doing like 8:15s. I'm like, hey man, we're supposed to run 8:30. Why are we running 8:15?
Well,
Anyway,
see, I could tell you that with my body because I do know when I'm running, I'm like, okay, I know this is not like how I feel when I'm supposed to be running an easy pace. If I can tell you that because I know how I feel now with that. But that was really invaluable. That and trail running taught me to stop focusing so much on pace and focus on effort. Those two things were really big for me. And they helped me really rethink the way that I was training, And it helped me not to overtrain too, right? Because a lot depends on if you're going to go out and do speed work, that's great, but you can't always hit certain paces in your speed work and that could be totally unrelated to your conditioning level. It's impossible to hit like your ideal marathon pace when it's 85 degrees outside and 70% humidity. Like it's just a fool's errand to try, but you can hit the effort. Like you can hit the effort of what that feels like. And if you can do that, you're achieving the same thing. So that's really that's still the way
Well, I want to go
charge.
back because I think this is important. Is that so? You went to this sports dietitian first and spent a lot of time and effort for months and months, literally. I remember you weighing different things and doing all these things to make sure
Yeah,
that you're eating the right
I
things.
was measuring things.
And it made a big change. Like that, it was obvious even in your body. Like you looked great before, but like just the way your body started to kind of change. So that was one. And then two is you hired a coach like several months later. I don't know if it was like a year later or 8 months later. I don't remember. But what I do know is from there, you started seeing substantial gains in your marathon
Yeah.
times and your training.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
let's then go back to you've done the marathon, or maybe move forward to when you went to Dallas. I remember the picture still when you PR'd.
Yeah. Yeah. That was December of 2018. Yeah. The goal had been for me to PR at Wine Glass, which was back, I think, in October that year. But as luck would have it, I hardly ever get sick, but man, something got its fangs in me like the week of that race. And by the time we got up to Corning, upstate New York, I could barely speak. Like I had bronchitis, just really bad. It's like, I'm running this race. We flew all the way to Buffalo, New York, and now we drove like 3 hours to get to this small town. Everybody says this race is point to point, it's a gentle downhill. I was like, this is PR territory. And I was just sick as a dog. And I still ran a sub 3:30.
I remember you running a lot of 330s, and then eventually you got to 320, and then started to even get better than
Well, the
that.
goal there was I was going to try to hit 320 there. Like my PR before that had been 321 flat in Chicago. I think that was in 2014. And I was like,
I went to that with you, right?
yeah, that was our first away race together, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, I got to get under 320. And I was going to do that at Wine Glass because I was like,
You're ready.
Yeah, I was ready. It's a point to point. There weren't going to be a lot of turns. It wasn't that screaming downhill at the Revel races. It's just a gentle downhill. I'm like, I can handle that. And then I just got that. It's like everybody has a story of getting sick before a race.
Something.
Unlying enough. And so I still did fine, but I was like, But when I got home, Liza, my coach at the time, said, I'm just going to say this now, and I don't want you to feel any kind of pressure. But I think that you have the fitness and you didn't go all out there. If you want to turn it around and let's see if we can race Dallas, which was at that time about, I think maybe 8 to 9 weeks away, we can do that. And so I said, okay, if you think I can do that and it won't just dig myself into a hole, then I'll do it. And so we did. I took a little bit of downtime or whatever, and I got back on the horse. And I thought, Dallas is not the easiest race to PR. I was like, I don't know about, I love Dallas. I do. I've run Dallas multiple times. I can't remember if I've done it 5 times or 4 times, the full. I've done the half a lot as well. But I said, oh, okay, I'm going to go all in. I'll go all in for Dallas. We'll see what we can do. And I remember that day we got the best weather. We just got blessed.
I was chilly.
It was like,
because I was a spectator that day.
Like 39 degrees at the start, and it was sunny. And I felt great. And I ended up finishing in 316 something. And I was just overjoyed. I was like over the moon. I was like, I cannot believe this just happened. I survived that hill on Winstead. And it's just, I was like, it was my hometown race. And then it also just gave me a confidence boost as, okay, maybe I could go sub 315. Like I never thought, like it just recalibrated what I thought I was capable of. Because at the time I was like, man, if I can just get under 320, I'm going to be on top of the moon. I don't have to work hard.
How old were you when you hit that PR?
43, 43, 44, 43. I can't do it right now. I do know how old I was when I PR'd in Houston, which was in January 2020, before the world fell apart. If you remember, 5 years ago.
I was sick as a dog that day.
Yeah, you were supposed to run the half, and you didn't even run the half because you were really sick. Probably you
I was in the bed the whole time.
Probably had COVID and didn't know it.
Yeah, we didn't know. We didn't know about COVID until 2 weeks later.
I mean, it was
I
here,
think we
but
knew.
yeah, but I dipped right under 315,
Yeah, 314. Yeah,
55, which is,
whatever.
you know,
It's still 314.
right under 315. And not in super shoes, I might add. And now when I think about it, I'm like, I don't even know if I could race it without super shoes. But yeah, it was a beautiful day in Houston. It's like one of those days you get in Houston. You either get really good weather or you get not so good weather. And
So you're 40.
I was 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had great weather. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah. So I PR'd in the marathon at 45.
Pretty
And
awesome.
yeah, I don't really know that I could PR again at this point, just because, not really so much because of my age now or whatever. It's just the amount of work that you have to do as you start maturing as an athlete. And especially as you become a woman who is menopausal, when all your estrogen
You are?
chat and things change. And now you have to work twice as hard just to maintain, much less to gain things. And this past year, well, in 2023, I had a really good race in Chicago. If I could have stayed out of the Portos, I probably would have dipped under 315 again, but I ended up running 321 and change. And I wanted to ride that high, into 2024. I was going to turn 50. I was going to race even harder. What was it, Icarus or whatever? That who you fly too close to the sun and then you get burned. I started feeling that in the spring of 2024. I started having some nagging pain in my butt cheek where it connects to your hamstring. And you're just like, it's just an aches and pains. I've been running marathons for a long time. Something always hurts or whatever. The pain just migrates around, except this kind of stayed and was a little nagging, but whatever. I was having some foot pain in my left foot. So the opposite foot in the ball of my foot. And I was even having some swelling with that. And I just was like, I don't know what it is. I ran through it. I got through Boston, all this and that. And then I was like, okay, for the summertime, I'm going to really focus on speed. And that's when my hamstring really balked. And I started to feel some sharp pain there whenever I would try to accelerate. And so I said, okay, I got to stop and see what's going on. So that sent me through an odyssey of seeing multiple doctors, multiple opinions, MRI, everything just turned out to be chronic, but not really, maybe overuse, but just nothing was acute. It wasn't something that had just happened, or it's not like I tore a ligament or I did tear a ligament in my foot, but it happened over time. It was just chronic tearing. Same thing with, I just had some tendinopathy. And so anyway, I had been in PT. I've been doing diligent PT basically for the last 6 months of 2024. I cleared my racing schedule. I was supposed to race Indianapolis last November. So I canceled all of that. I just canceled everything. I really probably should have stopped running in June, July, but we had that trip planned in September where we were going to the Alps and we were going to be doing a lot of running, and I needed to be in good enough shape. Yeah, hiking and running. And so I could run slow, and I say slow.
We weren't going to cancel that trip, so.
We were not canceling that trip. I was trip.
Yeah.
That was not going to happen.
We would have if
No.
you would have been really hurt, but you weren't.
But we had a wonderful time. But I had told myself that the last day that we ran there, I was going to stop running for a month. I was just going to, I've tried everything else, but I'm just going to stop running. And so I remember it was Friday, September 13th. And that was the last day I ran and I actually took 5 weeks off. I did not run at all for 5 weeks, which is the longest stretch that I have not run in over 12 years. So it was quite an eye opener for me. But you know what? The sky didn't fall. Nothing terrible happened. I didn't
so I
gain
think there's a few important things to go back. So one of the things is for 12 years, you were not injured at all. Maybe some pain.
That's true. Aside from regular aches and pains and here and there, I might have, but no, I did not have any type of sidelining injury. I did not have to take any extended time off. So yes, and I credit a lot of that to smart training. And that's because I had a coach who was very attuned to my particular running style, my life, what's going on. And
I agree. But the things that you're not bringing up is the weight training you've been doing, the stretching, all of those things that
I didn't
coach.
We didn't do a lot of I didn't do a lot of stretching, to be quite honest, all throughout. I am like the world's stiffest. I'm a 10 woman. And I was that way before I started running. And we all know that if you run long distance for a long time, it just makes you stiffer and stiffer. So if I could go back and change some things, I would have done some stretching. Now, I'm not saying you have to do yoga. If you do yoga and you like it, great. I wish I liked it. I don't. I'm not going to do it. I will do some certain stretches that like my PT has showed me, and some things that I also worked with a personal trainer for about a year and a half. And she showed me a lot of mobility things that I could be doing. But those are things that I started to slowly incorporate. But I will say that I have always spent time in the gym. So I did go to the gym and do those things as well as run for the last 12 years. So I haven't just run. So yeah, I think that made a big difference. Also, my diet was a lot better over the past 10 years. And that means eating enough calories, also eating proteins and fats and carbs, and not just a bunch of carbs, or not a lot of processed food if I could avoid it. So yeah, I think there's that. I think some of it's just a little bit of luck and genetics. Some people are just a little bit more injury prone than others. But yeah, overall, I think you have to really, I don't overdo it in training. I'm a big proponent of running slow, whatever slow is for you, until it's time to run fast. And I do think that most people run too much too fast, and it catches up with you. It does. You think it doesn't in the moment because it's easy for you, but it all adds up, and then it's a lot of stress on the body. So one thing that when I pace runners, or like when I worked with DRC and we would have runners in a program, I would try to explain to them, you're not going to gain anything by running your easy runs on the fast range of your easy pace. If you're supposed to run anywhere from 10 to 10:40, running at 10 all the time doesn't mean you're going to be a faster runner. What matters is if you can do the whole training program, but be well rested enough to absorb all your speed work and things like that's what's going to get you faster. You have to marathoning and racing marathons is hard. There's a difference between racing a marathon and running a marathon. And if you want to race marathons and you want to do well, you have to follow a structured program. And you can't just be out there doing every run on the fast range, or the fast end of your pace range, or whatever it is. You should be running easy when it's supposed to be easy. You should be running recovery when it's supposed to be recovery. And you should be running speed when you're supposed to be doing speed. And I pretty much follow that, but I'm a rule follower.
Yeah, you are.
And I like to run with groups. I do. And I started running more with groups, but my program is less structured now. I knew well enough when I was training to hit the particular goals that I was trying to hit. I couldn't run with other people or people would sometimes ask me, what pace are you going to run? I don't know. I'm going to run an easy pace. Today, I'm going to run whatever feels easy to me. It might be 10 minutes a mile. It might be 9 minutes a mile. I can't tell you that until I get out there, because maybe I'm really tired from the day before because I did speed work, or I stayed up late, or I had a really hard day at work. And so tomorrow's easy run might be slower than it normally would be. It doesn't matter. It's an easy run.
That's right.
So I think
the thing that somebody told me once, not so long ago, was that Jose said, look, I've been doing this for 20 something years. What I care now about is longevity in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he does run fast. He still runs under 6-minute miles when he does half marathons. So he's really fast. We'll go out on a Sunday and we'll run a 10-minute mile, like for 10 miles or something like that. There's no reason to run that fast.
Yeah. And some people can tolerate running on the faster end of their EC. I'm not saying that's a wrong thing to do. I'm just saying if you're finding yourself getting injured or dealing with aches and pains or things like that, or wondering why you're not getting faster, it's probably not. You might want to just consider that. Think about that. Because it's very easy to do, to just run too much, too fast.
So as we look at, for 6 months, somewhat recent, actually really recent, kind of hurt once they get out of running. Instead of running, you actually did do a lot of more heavier weights, and you did a lot of weight stuff, but then you're back into running again. So that's good, because now you have Boston and then London. Talk about how that's been going and what you're thinking long-term now, or at least this year.
I don't have any goals for Boston, certainly not London, being 6 days after Boston, but I don't have any goals for Boston other than to just enjoy and celebrate the race. That's usually my goal in Boston, because I consider it a victory lap. I never set out really also to run consecutive Bostons. Like, But after 2 or 3 times, I was like,
See
okay.
if you can streak it.
Yeah, I was like, maybe I can streak this. I started learning about people who streaked it. And then it just became a personal challenge to me, maybe like a commitment that I made to myself. Every year, it's can you commit to yourself and to the craft of running that you're going to train to hit this goal, to qualify every year. Because for us running amateurs, it's like our Olympics, and it's a magical experience. I can't words. Every time I go, I get just as excited about it when I get there as the first time. The magic doesn't fade. And when you round that last corner and you see the finish line, it's just a celebration. When you run for a long time and you've been there like doing this for a decade or more, and it's just, you're like, wow, I've been able to do this for a long time now. It's just been a personal goal of mine. So at this point, I don't know if I will, because I always raced a fall marathon in part so that I would have a qualifier in hand for the next Boston. And then I would not need to worry about requalifying at Boston, because has been a more technically challenging race for me, even though I've run it many times and I, excuse me, understand the course. But so if I don't qualify this time in Boston, I do not have a qualifying marathon to sign up for the next Boston. And I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. If I qualify, then I will decide in September if I'm going to run it again.
You'll do it again if you qualify.
Which I probably will, because the FOMO is really strong. If I don't qualify, then that's where we are. All that to say that it has been really challenging getting back into running the longer distances for me. It's something actually for the last I think I trained so hard leading up to Chicago in 2023. I really didn't realize that I was on the point of burnout again. And I should have taken a step back and said, no, let's chill out for the spring. And hindsight is 2020. But I was already starting to feel, this is a grind. Like all this marathon pace and these really long runs. I just wasn't getting the fulfillment out of the training. And that is if you're not always happy in training, sometimes runs you just got to get them done. And that's just the way it is. But if you're not really enjoying running longer distance in the training, then it's time to think about other things. And so that's where I am now, especially with the injury. In a way, was a blessing, because it made me realize that I can, in fact, stop running for 5 weeks and the world does not end. 5 years ago, I would have maybe felt a lot differently about that. Because I was really, and we all go through that. Some people over-identify with their work and over-identify with maybe a parenting role or something. And I was over-identifying with myself as a runner, and I run marathons and that's what I do. And if I can't run marathons, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And that was actually my thought process as I was in the beginning stages of getting these injuries addressed was, what am I going to do now? I opened my eyes up to the fact that there's so many other things you can do, and maybe focusing on something like shorter distances, which is something I never really allowed myself to even think about, because I was always so hyper focused on the long stuff that, the idea of running can I run a faster 5K? Can we PR a 5K now? Like, I've never trained for 5Ks.
Are you bringing me into this? You said we.
Huh?
Are you bringing me into this? Because you said we.
Sure, we can race a 5K. I mean, that'd be really hard for me to beat you in a 5K, but I can I can run fast enough to make you nervous. So that's always the goal. Yeah, so that's where we are now. I'm looking forward to having a good race in Boston. I've been doing the work. My body's been able to tolerate the longer distances. It's just been harder for me, I think, mentally to do them, just because I'm not into the training as much as I would have been. Of course, I don't have any type of performance goal. I just would like to run and enjoy the race. We'll just have to see what happens. Now, London is just party pace the whole way. It's just going to be walk, jog. Seriously, like the last thing I want to do is re-injure myself or hurt myself after I have come all this way. And I would never advise somebody to run 2 marathons 6 days apart. I just would not. But people do it. Because I was trying to get my 6 stars. And even at this point, I am undecided as to whether I'm going to complete that journey and go to Tokyo. They have added a 7th star now, Sydney, which, is great. But I've spent 10 years trying to get my 6 stars. I had to buy my way into London. I'll have to buy my way into Tokyo if I want that. And just after listening to some experiences at the most recent Tokyo, I don't know if I want to do that. Now that could change. I'm leaving it all up to, I'll make that decision when I get to it. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to a lot of unstructured running. after Boston and London for the first time in a long time, not having a goal race on the calendar. That'll be something kind of foreign to me, but I think it'll be good for me because it teaches me to just be less serious about my running. Not that I won't run. Of course, I'm still going to run, but I'm not going to be focusing on longer miles. I want to focus more on, if anything, it'll be some shorter distance racing. I know we have signed up for the Houston Half next January. We both love that race. In fact, my PR there, yeah, I think my PR is there in the Houston Half.
131 or something?
No, my PR is like 133 something, I think. Yeah, yeah. So I think I can probably focus, if I want to focus on a big goal, I think that may be the goal, is to try to really race that, because that's an excellent half.
Half marathons are way more fun.
Yeah, and the training doesn't take over your life the way that a marathon does. But I would really like to maybe focus on that as a long-term distance goal, and then maybe just focus on the shorter stuff for a while. Not to say that I'm giving up completely on marathons, but maybe stepping away from those for a while. Because I also want my body a little bit of a break.
Something that you've done a really good job over time is that you've gone through this before, this burnout of marathons. You've always run the Boston every year. So you've always had that qualifying time to either during Boston or even, I remember a time you're like, I got to do something different. And the thing that you spent for 2 years plus was focusing in on trail and ultra running. And because you are actually burned out, this is a very similar scenario. And in one thing, you're very good, many things, but in addition to, you're very good at recognizing that. And then just saying, in a healthy way, I think, to say, let's try something different, whether it's, let's go into hardcore weight training and then do some 5Ks, 10Ks, whatever, and focus in on that. I think you will for a little while. But you seem to always come back to this marathon thinking. We'll see what happens. That's something that it's fun to see your evolution, because I get to see it all day, every day. But I get to watch it and just see you reinvent yourself in some different ways. You've done it a lot, and it's cool to see. But you've always said, I still want to go do, whether it's running or training or something, you're still in the thick of doing stuff hardcore. You're still hardcore.
Yeah, inactivity is not an option for me. I'm a very active person. So if I was to sustain an injury where God forbid, they were to say, you can't run anymore, like that'd be devastating to me. I'm not going to lie. Of course, I love running, but I will find other ways. I will find some other sport, some other activity to work to excel at. I'm really excited about getting back into the gym and focusing on actually gaining strength, and like, how much can I bench press, and how much can I squat, and how much can I deadlift? And those are not things that you think about as a distance runner. You just want to be strong enough to prevent injury and maybe get your legs battle ready if you're doing a downhill or a hilly course or something like that. But you don't need to be able to bench press a heavy weight to be a runner. But I think it's cool because I've noticed, and that's another thing, when you're new at something, you notice gains very quickly when you're consistent. And I'm way past that in running now. Like, for me to eke out a second faster I have to do so much work for that. When I'm bumping up on the limits of like my fitness and my capability, it gets harder and harder to sustain that level of training when you're like, you might train for months and you run 2 seconds faster than, and you're like, was that really worth it? Whereas you train for several months in the gym, and you're going to see if you haven't. Now, of course, you're going to bump up against the same thing if you're weight training for a
while.
There's always something else to do. We bought the pull-up bar. We have the pull-up bar in the house now. I have goals of doing pull-ups and chin-ups now. Those are very difficult to do, but it's very satisfying when you can do several of those and you realize, oh, my strength's actually improving. Always a work in progress.
Lea, this has been really great. Is there something that maybe I should have asked, but that I might have missed that you can think of?
No, I think we covered it all.
Covered your whole entire journey. This has been really great having you on. I really appreciate having you on. And I know others, it's funny, because they've been asking to have you on as well. I was like, when's Lea going to get on? I was like, I don't know, like whenever.
I think they like your post-race videos when I'm dying on the floor of a hotel room better, but.
We used to do that. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So, Lea, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. Don't forget to rate and review us. And until next time, take care, everyone. And thanks again, Lea.
Thank you.